Record for case number case number 2017-06-1953, State of Ohio versus Stanley Ford. Mr. Ford's present, represented by counsel, Attorney Gorman and Attorney Riley. On behalf of the State of Ohio, our attorneys Loprinzi and D'Angelo. It is Wednesday, September 15th. We are proceeding with the state's case. Detective Looney will take the stand to continue his direct examination. But as I have done at the start of every day, I want to reiterate that the safety protocols that we're taking due to the mask mandate issued by the Summit County Executive, as well as the administrative order issued by the Summit County Common Pleas Administrative Judge. The first 12 jurors are in the jury box, but they are separated by plexiglass between them as well as in front of them. They are all wearing their masks at all times. There are two observers in the courtroom, one being a videographer and the other being a still photographer. They are masked at all times. The alternate jurors are in the gallery portion of the courtroom. They, of course, are spread out and wearing masks at all times. The attorneys are wearing masks at all times. The court reporter and the judge, we are wearing masks when we're not talking. And the following exceptions have been, I find, deemed appropriate based on the defendant's right to a fair trial and to confront his accusers. And that is that while the attorneys are questioning a witness or conducting cross-examination, they will not wear a mask, as well as when the witness enters the room after they've been sworn in and seated, they will remove their masks so that the jury can determine the credibility of those witnesses, as well as effective communication between the attorney and the witness. Mr. Loprinzi, and in between each witness, the task force member of the coronavirus task force is cleaning the witness chair and changing the microphone cover. Mr. Loprinzi, did I accurately reflect the steps we've taken?
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Gorman?
Yes, Judge.
All right. In addition, Mr. Ford, good morning.
Good morning.
You have the right, as you know, because you are the accused, not to wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask and you want a face shield, we can provide you one of those, or you can choose to wear the white cloth mask that you have been wearing throughout the trial. Do you understand those choices?
I do, Your Honor.
And do you intend or wish to continue to wear the white cloth mask that you're wearing today?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Riley.
Your Honor, good morning. At this court, Scott Riley, Judge Holman, on behalf of Stanley Ford, this time we review all prior motions, including but not limited to our motion for sentence and our opposition to Your Honor.
All right, your motions are acknowledged and denied based on my previous written rulings. And then I believe that you have some other things, gentlemen, to put on the record.
I believe they do, Your Honor.
Sounds like it.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. All right.
Gentlemen? I'm just here to.
Oh, you're going to go back and print two things on too late?
That's fine.
No, I mean, it's just. All right.
All right, gentlemen.
So, you want to talk about, our discussion last night regarding the evidence?
Yes.
All right. So, Your Honor, and I'll try and do this succinctly, and I guess Mr. Gorman can chime in if I say it incorrectly or miss something. So,
Before we start, so this is outside the hearing of the jury. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to put on the record that all the attorneys, myself, the court reporter, and the defendant are vaccinated. I wanted to put that on the record, so you can take your mask off if you'd like to,
yes.
so we can hear you. Thank you.
So yesterday, at the end of the day, and through the process, we have been discussing the evidentiary, I guess, whether it's admissible evidence for the defense to bring out a statement by Mr. Selby that he claimed came from Mr. Boggs regarding his involvement in setting this fire. We had believed it was a hearsay statement, and so we didn't believe it was admissible, and the prejudicial value of just saying, hey, this guy motioned to the deputies, and they came out. He pointed to Mr. Boggs and then made a statement to them. Was hanging out there, which seemed to be somewhat mysterious to the jury, and we were concerned about that. So in the process, we then talked to the court, and I believe that conversation, and based on the way the evidence is coming in at this point, the court, we believe, would probably allow defense on cross-examination of Detective Looney to ask him about certain things he learned during his investigation, which led him to certain things or not to certain things, particularly because we're talking about alternate suspects. In light of that, believing that would come out that way anyway, we had a conversation last night, me and Mr. Gorman, regarding the fact that we would not object to him cross-examining Mr. Looney on those issues, and that we ultimately might even then bring in Mr. Selby's statement so that we can, or allow them to bring in his statement so that we can then let the jury hear what it was, and then we would, through a rebuttal, so to speak, through our Detective Looney, or redirect, then bring out why we believe that statement not to be correct. And so that we thought would be an efficient way of getting the information out for them and us. We also had another concern that the way we thought it might come out initially was that Mr. Boggs would have to take a stand. He would then maybe deny saying it, and then that would lead us down another path. We had concerns about putting Mr. Boggs on the stand, number one, because we thought he might take the fifth, which he would do outside the presence of the jury, which leaves us in the same spot. The other issue is if he doesn't take the fifth, no matter how much we instruct him about a polygraph, he could blurt it out, and it was very concerning to us because of who he is. So having said that, I think that accurately, so then the last thing we just discussed was that Mr. Boggs is actually on his way here.
Not yet. Well, they're stuck in traffic. So they called Ken about 10 minutes ago and said they were 45 minutes out.
Okay.
So they hadn't even got to the detention center yet.
No, but he's on his way from...
Right, unless you don't need him.
Well, and so here's the thing, we discussed that. And for purposes of the defense, they had asked me, well, what if he comes here, he talks to his lawyer, and says, yeah, I said that. Or I did it, for all that. I mean, I don't expect he would do that, but he could. So for their thoroughness,
okay,
they wanted to know if that were to happen, would we then object because we made this agreement? And I said no. If he comes and he does that,
okay,
we will revisit that issue, but they wanted at least to have him come, talk to his attorney, and see what he was going to do.
And just so we have a clear understanding, Judge, I think what the prosecutor is asking us to do is to acknowledge through their discussions with the Portage County Sheriff's Department, the jail, that the Akron Beacon Journal is in fact divided into pods, not for each particular cell, pods.
Available.
It's available. And I think that the interest of that, Judge, for them, frankly, is just putting all the cards on the table, is that the information that is contained in Mr. Selby's statement, I think for the most part, if not all, I can't say that for certain, but would be able to be gotten from reading that article or hearing from Mr. Boggs potentially. And the cause and all those things of the fire might be inaccurate. So those are all things that we're aware of, Judge, and everything the prosecutor said is true. And
so I guess, are you stipulating that the Akron Beacon Journal was delivered is available at the Portage County Jail?
Well, and I guess what we agreed to is that we would be allowed to ask
okay,
Detective Looney those questions.
I understand.
He would say that through the investigation, he was able to learn that the Akron Beacon Journal was available.
Okay.
And then an article came out on the 17th, and this statement was made on the 21st.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we know they're going to do that, Judge, and we
all right,
know why they're doing it. And taking all that into consideration, I can tell you I've consulted with Mr. Riley in regard to this as well. He's in agreement with the things that I'm saying. And we do find it, Judge, to be very problematic for Mr. Boggs to take a stand and start talking about why he did
Right.
this against the admonitions, is that the right word?
Well, you'd have to tell your question.
Yeah.
You'd have to tailor your questions to
Well, I
their.
know, but you never.
Well, I understand that.
And I don't think, Judge, he would feel like he has a lot to lose.
Correct.
So-
Yeah, what's a contempt?
So, yeah, what's a
Which is exactly our
Right
conversation.
now, that's our conversation, Judge, and for all of those reasons, we find it to be the best solution.
Okay, so I'm gonna have him still brought here. Mr. Alexander, who I've appointed to represent Mr. Boggs, will speak with him, find out what his intentions are, and then based on those intentions, you can make a determination of whether or not, he's probably not gonna be here now till 1 o'clock. So I don't know that it's today, it might be Friday.
That's fine, Judge, but if he's here at 1, we might know our answers.
Right, no, exactly, and then you can make that determination.
Yes,
Does Mr. Alexander, has anybody talked to Mr. Alexander
I have not yet.
To what?
well, so that he knows what to talk to his client about to see how, like, in other words,
I understand. So what the initial conversation I had with Attorney Alexander is he wanted some information about the case. So I gave him a snapshot of what I thought, and I told him about Mr. Selby and all of those things. But then Mr. D'Angelo provided me a copy of the incident report, or the ROI. It's pretty thick. Mr. Masich is providing that to Mr. Alexander so that when he talks to him, I did explain to him that what we want to know is he prepared to come in here and talk about that statement? Did he make it? But we can shore that up with Mr. Alexander.
That half-page statement, Judge, is that in that package?
I didn't know if you wanted that to go to Mr. Alexander, so I did not provide that to him. But if you want him to have that when he goes to talk to Mr. Boggs,
I think it cuts to the heart of the matter.
okay.
yeah.
And so then what we can do is when we're in here, Mr. Masich can contact Mr. Alexander, give him what we expect.
I don't want Boggs to have Mr. Selby's.
No, that's fine.
So he'll provide that to Mr. Alexander, and then the specific questions you want Mr. Alexander to talk to Mr. Boggs about is he going to take the fifth?
Yes?
Or is he going to admit he made those statements?
Yes,
Or is he going to deny he made those statements?
yes.
Or is he going to admit he started the fires on the stand in front of the jury?
Those are all good relevant questions, Judge.
So you would like those questions answered when Mr. Alexander goes to talk to Mr. Boggs?
Now, we also have to be mindful that obviously there's privilege for Mr. Alexander and Mr. Boggs.
True.
And so, basically.
Is he going to take the fifth, or is he going to come in here?
Correct.
Okay, right.
And then if he is going to come in here, can he, was he willing to tell us what it is he's going to say?
Okay.
But we are mindful that.
Yeah, so I guess maybe Mr. Alexander has to Mr. Alexander has to speak with Mr. Boggs about then communicating back to us what his intentions are with regards to his testimony.
So do we want to maybe.
And that Mr. Alexander has to explain to him that if he chooses to testify, there will be zero communication about a polygraph.
Would it be prudent to have Mr. Alexander come in our break if he's available so that counsel can talk to him?
Yeah, sure, we could do that.
Is that-
That's fine.
Maybe how about the lunch break?
Yeah.
How about lunch break?
That's
Maybe
fine.
I just ask him if he can come over at 12. So will you just do that instead of make a copy of that for Mr. Alexander and then ask him if he can come over at 12 so that we can kind of explain what the attorneys would like him to inquire of his client.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, what else?
So then, additionally, as the court recalls, we had a stipulation regarding all the photographs by the Akron Police Department that were collected or taken during the search warrants in this case. And that either side would not have to call a witness to do that, and that either side could use any of the photographs in those two groups or in those groups. However, yesterday, the state realized that the photographs relating to Mr. Ford's sneakers or tennis shoes that were collected and tested were taken not by Akron Police Department, and they were actually taken by the Akron Fire Department.
Okay.
So this morning I talked to Mr. Gorman and indicated that we would be bringing in the fire department to authenticate the photographs, and he felt that was not necessary, that if they're coming in anyway, that he would just allow us to use them and stipulate their authenticity. And even though Detective Looney has already indicated that he was not present when the stuff was collected, because he was actually interviewing Mr. Ford at the time in the DB car, that we could use them through him to just indicate through the investigation that these were this was collected during the search warrant.
Mr. Gorman?
Judge, I had those conversations with Prosecutor Frenzy. I realized on behalf of my client that he has not rested his case. He certainly can call folks in to authenticate these pictures through the Akron Fire Department. And I don't see the need to do that, Judge, while we have Detective Looney, who was part of the search process on the stand, because it's going to come in anyway, as the prosecutor said. So we don't object to him doing that through Detective Looney.
Okay.
Unless Mr. Riley has a different thought.
No, that's fine.
No, he just is happy that there's a picture of the sneakers, because he couldn't find those yesterday. All right, anything else?
No, I don't believe so.
Jury here?
Yes.
All right, ready? All right, bring them in.
Do you want these, or we can Ruth?
Give them to Ruth. But is that all 17 of them?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, and also,
Never mind.
I
They're right there.
got, yeah, I know, but we already had them, so, well, I guess I could.
They're, it's not a problem. Wait. I'll just get the box with the others.
There.
I'm sorry. I almost took my mask off to hear you, but I, yes.
I don't need it this second, but I need it before I stand up.
All right, if you just poke your head out and tell him that while I'm doing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, thank you. By a show of hands, please indicate that whether you have complied with my previous admonitions, not spoken to anybody about the case, talked about among yourselves, or formed an opinion. I see 17 hands, thank you. And Detective Looney, you've complied with my order yesterday indicating that you were under oath and not to talk about the state of your testimony. You remain under oath, and Mr. LaPrinzi, you may proceed.
Mr. Gorman's out of the room, so.
Here we go. That, because I told him to do. All right, now you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Detective Looney. So let's continue on. A few more things, and then we'll try and wrap this up. So you had talked about the fact that during the search warrant on May 18th, 2017, you were actually talking to Mr. Ford, and we heard heard that interview, correct?
Correct.
And during that interview, as lead investigator, were you then made aware, and I think we heard some of it in the tape, but you were made aware of the items that were collected at that time?
That's correct.
And one of the items that we know has been collected was those New Balance sneakers.
That's correct.
May I approach, Judge?
You may.
So I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you what I've marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 167, 168, 169. Do you recognize these photos? And let me put them over for you there.
Yes.
And what do they depict?
Exhibit 167, these are photos taken from the search warrant. 168 exhibit as well, photos taken from the search warrant. This is a picture of the trash that was dumped onto the ground and photographed. And 169 exhibit shows an additional photo with the shoes amidst the trash as well on the ground.
All right. And these shoes were taken from, I think you said yesterday, 1374, is that correct? I mean, excuse me, 1370?
Yes, there were search warrants for both homes.
All right. And showing State's Exhibit 167, would that be the trash can that the shoes were found in?
Yes,
And State's number, now this was inside the house at this point, 1370,
that's correct.
and then 168, let's see if I can get that glare. And this would be outside, dumped out,
Yes,
and then 169, I think you had, maybe I can zoom in a little bit, indicated that the sneakers are here in this photograph.
that's correct.
Would that
yes.
be here and here?
Yes,
All right, and now obviously up here we can, is that the bottom of that trash can?
yes.
All right. And in, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 119. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I don't
What-
see the exhibit number, but yes.
Oh, here.
Oh, yes, it's in there.
And so what is that?
These are the New Balance sneakers that were recovered from the trash can during the search warrant, and it has the exhibit number and Ohio State Fire Marshal Forensic Lab label as well.
Okay. And these sneakers do not have shoelaces in them, is that fair?
That's correct.
And in the photographs, they also, when they were found, did not have shoelaces, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Detective Looney, in regards to your viewing of some of the video that was recovered from Mr. Williams's surveillance cameras, do you recall the night, and so I want to be clear on this, May 14th, 2017 was which day of the week?
Sunday.
And that was Mother's Day, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so the fire at 693 Fultz started at approximately what time?
The early morning hours of the 15th.
Okay, so it was past midnight.
That's correct.
Prior to midnight, on the 14th, when you viewed the video, and I think Bradley Barkhurst's presentation showed this, what did you see on the street just prior to midnight?
There were cars parked
All right.
along Fultz,
All
up
right.
and down the street.
And can you describe for us, and I know they saw the video, but in case they couldn't see it very well, was there a lot of cars, just a couple cars?
Apparently there were a lot, just showing in the video, there were at least 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 or more.
And they would have been lining which street?
On Fultz Street, on the right side or north side of the street.
And at some point in time, did you notice in the video when the last vehicle that was in that video left?
Yes,
What time would that have been?
roughly 10 minutes to 1 a.m. or 12:50 a.m.
And did you notice anything of significance that happened sometime after that?
Yes,
What's that?
there was movement at 1370 Hillcrest about 8 minutes later or so, after that last vehicle left.
And then after that movement at 1370, then what happened, do you recall, in the video?
It appeared that an individual left from 1370 Hillcrest and began walking, I believe, south on Hillcrest. And then there was additional movement on the video as well, on Fultz.
All right. In regards to Mr. Ford on the 18th after you interviewed him, the day of the search warrant,
Okay.
you interviewed him, he was in the back of your cruiser?
He was in the front of my DB car. We actually purposely put him in front of the car, in the front seat, and left the doors unlocked.
All right. And you obviously gave him a Miranda. We heard that on the video. after you interviewed him, was he released? I mean, he was free to go, right?
Yes,
And so you did not arrest him that day.
that's correct.
When was he arrested?
He was arrested on 5/23/2017.
All right, so May 23rd.
Yes,
At that time, when you arrested him, was he then interviewed?
yes, he was at the police station.
And he was in custody at that point in time.
That's correct.
And when you took him into custody and you interviewed him, did you Mirandize him?
Yes, we did twice.
All right. That interview lasted for some time, is that fair?
Yes.
And can you give us some estimate? I know it's hard to, pin down the exact amount of time, but how long do you believe that interview lasted?
He was at the station for over 3 hours.
I want to play a portion of that interview for you and for the jury. And that starts somewhere an hour and a half. It'll start an hour and a half or so into your interview, okay?
Okay.
And you've heard this, right?
Yes.
And you've reviewed it prior to your coming to testify, right?
Yes.
Can you describe the tenor of the interview for the first hour and a half before this clip we're about to play?
There was a discussion of the same parts of the interview we conducted in the car, actions. We inquired with Mr. Ford, what was your day like? What did you do that day for Mother's Day before leading up to into the early morning hours and coming in and out of the home. We established, as he said, it was me coming in. And then we moved forward to the portion of the video where as to, well, why were you there? Why were you down there? And we began to discuss that. There's a lot of still evasiveness and a lot of going in circles about what was done or not done. And then we continued, myself and Detective Bell at the time. There were 2 detectives.
All right. And so the interview in the DB car seemed to focus on you came into the house. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. That kind of thing. There was a lot of back and forth about that.
Yes.
All right. And so now you've gotten past that. Now this portion is going to be about, okay, if you were out of the house, what were you doing?
That's correct.
Okay. Now we want to be fair through the whole interview. Every interview that you had, at no time, at every time, in every stage, Mr. Ford has said to you, I didn't do that. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Your Honor, this is going to be marked as State's Exhibit number 165.
Thank you.
And just, I want to make sure there's a time on the record.
You have a change number 2.
So starting,
Don't forget you have a change over to the left or right.
oh yes, please, thank you. For the purpose of the record, we're starting at 12:08 of the interview, which is section 5, and for the record, each section of this interview is 30 seconds, or 30 minutes, and so this is the 5th section, 12 minutes, 8 seconds in.
May we approach real quick?
Yeah. Well,
Maybe, Judge?
Yeah.
I was asking this.
I know, I wasn't sure.
You're looking at me.
I wasn't sure. Okay, Mr. LaPrinzi, you may proceed.
All right, and so Detective Looney, unlike the other one that was only audio recorded, this one was actually video recorded, is that correct?
Yes, video and audio.
Okay, and so in this, what you're seeing on the screen here is states 165. What are we looking at?
This is our DB interview room number 4. Present is myself in the bottom right corner, plaid shirt. Detective John Bell, white striped shirt, he's standing up, and Mr. Ford sitting in the middle.
All right. And you said this was your DB Detective Bureau room?
Yes, room number 4.
All right. So I'm going to start, like I indicated, at 12:08 on the interview, section 5.
I just don't have the right fucking time. We got the correct time. We got time. We got the exact time. I ain't even know. We got the exact time. This is your house, right? And this is your mother's house, right? And this is folks, all right? Right. Okay. When you took the camera or the TV, where'd you go? I think which door did you come out of? I came out the damn side door. The side door over here. What, my wife's house? Yeah. Yeah. And then where'd you go? I went straight to my mama's house. Okay. Did you go around the front? Yeah, I went back the front. I went back. No, the TV, I took the TV around the front into my mama's house. To the front of that's right there. Yeah. Yeah. So you go from this door to that door. Yeah. Carrying the TV. Yeah. And this is at that time. I don't know. I don't have the time. No, now we have you on camera right here going there. That's not, you went from one door to the next door, but we got you on camera from here down Fultz, walking back to your house. And then coming around, going in the side door. How do you explain that? Okay, wait a minute. Okay, if I did do that, if you got no problem doing that, it wasn't no damn fire down there. There wasn't no fucking fire down there. I'm telling you guys the truth, there wasn't no fucking fire down there, man. So where were you coming from? What you mean where I was coming from? If you're down on Fultz, that's not taking the TV. Where are you coming from when you're down here, Stanley? That's what we need an answer to. Well, where's it coming from down there? I can't. Think about it. It ain't nothing to think about, man. Because when the camera see me going down there, it wasn't no damn fire. I'm going to tell you guys once again. If it was a fucking fire down there, I'd have screamed at the top of my lungs. There's no question. The camera see you going down. Yeah, but I ain't set no fire, man. The camera see you coming back. Where were you going? Where was I going? Yeah. Why were you going down that way? Down Fultz. I'm not going to go down Fultz. For what? Yeah, you brought it back 20 seconds later. I'm not. Would you go down there? Brought it back. Did you see the fire and not call? Okay, if you see the fire and not call, I want to understand. Did you maybe think we would accuse you if you called? I did no shit. If you saw it, did you think you would be accused? I would have did no shit. Did you think that you would be looked at? I would have screamed. I would have did no shit like that. Yeah, my wife called 911. I think I did it. Man, listen, man. I didn't do it. Go ahead, tell us. I didn't do it, man. I didn't do it, man. Tell us, man. I didn't do it. Did you see the fire? Johnny Bill, once again. Did you see the fire? Johnny Bill, once again. Did you see it? If I would have saw fire down there at that time, I would have screamed and took my love and tell them there was a fire down on somebody's door. I didn't see no damn fire down there. I carried a TV next door. I did carry a TV next door. At that time. Okay. I don't know what time I took that TV, but I took the TV next door to my mama's house. It's over there right now. Oh man, it was in the morning when I took it over. I didn't know. No, it was like the dark time when I took that TV over there, man. So the camera should have saw me doing that. You know what I mean? All right. Yeah. Listen. Now. We see you walking down. And we see you walking back. What'd you go down there for? I ain't seen no fire. Make it make sense to us. Wait a minute. Yeah, we're trying to get this. Why did you go down there? Tell us, man. Just tell us. I can't get you, listen, I can't give you no good reason why I went down there, but listen. If you guys got me on camera, guys, walking down, okay, you got me walking down there and walking back, but guess what? What happened down here? There wasn't no fire, man. There wasn't no fucking fire. It wasn't no fire. Okay, why is it down there? Why did I go down there? I forget what I went down there for, man. I went down there, you guys got me going down there, but I ain't see no fire. And I didn't start no fire because I'm like this here. Man, I'm a community person, man. If I saw a fire, I'm calling the police, man. Just like I told them before, I worked with paper routes for the Beacon and
You still said you.
Okay, 2003 I understand.
You understand, listen.
Yeah.
Let's stay focused.
If that's the case, I'll say this little white kid out there.
Let's stay focused. Let's stay focused, okay?
By cowards.
Let's stay focused. You gotta explain this, man.
Explain what?
You gotta explain that.
I didn't see no fire.
I mean, you don't know why you're down there. What is that? What do you mean?
Probably not that much more damn business. I'm not listening. I'm free. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm free, man. Yeah. You know, but why did you go down there? Man, I don't know.
You got to better than that.
I don't know.
You got to better than that for your babies, man.
I know that's right.
You got to do better for your kids and their dogs. And their dogs.
I didn't do that, man.
That family.
I didn't do
You got to do better for that.
I didn't do that.
Do right by them.
I'm trying to. I didn't
Wrong's already been done.
I mean, I got my ears open, you know what I mean? But
Explain why. You ain't explaining that.
I didn't do that.
I didn't know for this. What happened?
What is it? Ain't nothing happened.
What did you see?
Ain't so many weak people. You didn't call 911, that's, no. You gotta deal with that. No. What happened? No. You went down, okay, you got the camera seeing me going down there. Once again, there wasn't no freaking fire, okay? Oh, man. I'm telling you, there was no fire, man. I wouldn't lie about that. If it wasn't fire at that time, listen here, man.
Why did you tell you how?
I'm gonna tell you something.
We need to tell you how. Or you can tell us the truth. For you to tell us the truth. Listen. I don't want to cross talk. I want to be clear. Listen. I didn't stop. I'm listening. I'm going to ask questions specific. If we tell you how and where, you tell us the truth.
To me, I don't care.
Where you get it?
I ain't started that fire, man.
Then, but, and it's one thing to, I know it's difficult.
Yeah, because it's serious.
To say that you did. Okay, we understand it's difficult.
I didn't do it.
You gotta tell us something, because what you're telling us is not making sense.
But that, you know, it's probably not, you know what, it's probably not making sense because I don't have the correct timeline. And listen, and I'm allowed to walk my neighborhood up the street, around the corner, you know, I'm trying to, I'm allowed to walk down here to the street and walk back. Even if you do have me on cameras walking down there, and I walk down there, there's no damn fire. I'm serious, man. I'm always about that shit.
Why was you walking down there? Why were you walking down there at the time of the fire? And you told us you were asleep.
Listen, it was.
You said you was
Listen, when my wife saw the fire, she did wake me up. I don't have the correct timeline.
When she saw the fire,
I was
you said
sleeping.
she woke you up.
Yeah.
You were outside right back before she called. Before she got up to go use the bathroom. Before she saw it, before she called, before she woke, before you wanted to listen, she lied.
Huh? She ain't lying.
Before she called.
She know I wouldn't do that.
Before she called.
Okay. She know I wouldn't do that.
Before she saw it, you came in the house. That's exactly true.
That ain't true.
That's exactly true.
That's not true.
Fact.
That's not true.
Where are you coming from down here?
That is not.
It just says that.
Okay, but
Make it make sense.
that's not true, man.
Make it make sense for us.
That's not true, man.
Yeah, make it make sense for us.
That's not true.
I'm not stuck on that. I'm talking make sense for you. Make sense why you get
Listen, I'm allowed to go down there, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, you're allowed to go down there, okay? I'm free, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then. So if I'm down there, listen, if I'm down there, okay, and if I'm down there, like you guys said, the camera told me to go down there. So now, if there's a fire right there and I'm down there, you think I'm running back up to the goddamn house and not call nobody about the fire? I don't listen to
You didn't run out. You didn't call your wife called.
Man, I don't even know them people. So nobody, I was too asleep. I mean, I got the time, somebody timeline is off, man.
At the house, man.
I don't know what happened at the house. I didn't do that. I didn't do that shit.
Why are you walking down Fulton and it's time to fire?
You know, I really don't have no, if you saw me walking down there, I mean, I'm just, if I'm walking down there, I'm free to walk, man. But I didn't set no fire, and I didn't see no fire.
All right, so you're walking down there.
I didn't see no fire.
Now you're gonna tell us you were asleep. What is it?
Man, they walking down there, the timeline is wrong, man. When my wife woke me up, it was a fire that she said. She said, Stanley, it's a fire. And I said, where? She said, down. I said, call 911 then. No, she said, I'm gonna call 911. I said, do that. But man, I ain't seen no fire, man.
Okay, you didn't see the fire.
I ain't started no fire, dog.
You were down there.
No, I went down there.
You was down there.
No, man, I ain't
No.
You
I got you guys make a reason else, but you didn't
Man, you guys better prove it to you. You guys better stop lying that I did it. I'm telling you, I didn't do it. I didn't do that. And I ain't gonna take no shot of that.
You tried to tell us.
No, I didn't
tell us several different stories.
Man, listen, I told you that was gonna happen when you walked up to me. When you came over here Sunday morning, and I'm sleepy, and I'm tired, and I'm delirious and shit. You said, why are you delirious? Fuck, I'm tired. Hell, you don't get delirious? I get delirious.
I worked 16, 18 hours.
That's you.
Why are you walking by the fire, Stanley?
I ain't walking by no fire in the bill.
Why are you down on Fulton at the time of the fire?
Why would you do this?
I wasn't off with it at the time.
It's time to give it to us.
I didn't do it.
Tell us why.
I ain't gonna say
Why are you walking down Fulton?
I didn't do it, brother.
Tell us how it happened.
I didn't do it.
Tell us how it happened.
I didn't do it.
You never denied yourself or you
I didn't do that shit.
The truth always comes out.
Listen, oh, no doubt, but I didn't do it.
The truth has come out. The truth has come out.
I didn't do that.
The truth is here.
It ain't on my part, 'cause I didn't do it. If y'all want to tell you, y'all want
It's
to,
on you.
well, you got to be
The truth has come out.
on. I didn't do it.
Why are you walking down by the fire on Fulton?
Johnny Bill, Johnny Bill,
What is that?
Johnny Bill,
Just explain it.
there wasn't no fire.
So tell us what you saw when you were walking down here.
What you mean what I saw? It was pitch black. It's pitch black down there. There was no fire. I didn't listen, man.
Why were you
I got no fucking business.
Why are you down there?
But I went down there. I wasn't down there like that by the house, man.
So where were you?
I mean, you just told us she was down there. I just told you. No, you keep telling me I'm down there. And I said, if I walk, if you saw me walking down there, and it was
Why are you walking down there?
it wasn't no fire, man.
So are you walking back?
It was no fire, man. I'm telling y'all, man, I didn't do that, man.
And you weren't asleep because the alarm code
Man.
indicates that you were not asleep.
Man, I
You can't be stuck in
was,
that no longer.
listen, I was at my wife's house in the bed asleep when she set a fire. I don't have the right timeline. I just don't have it right. I just don't do it. Well, I didn't do that.
So like I tell you, we happened.
Okay, well, I didn't do that, man.
And like I told you in the car, I told you a few days ago, when I prove it, I just said, man to man, we sat there just us. She said, we stood right outside the car. I said, when I prove it, you said you tell me the truth.
But I didn't do it.
You got proved it, man.
I can't tell you the truth on something I didn't do, man. I know they babies, man. I didn't do
No,
it. I didn't do it.
7 people. Yeah, just 7 people, 7 people.
Yeah, you take it alone. I didn't do that, man. Okay. I know y'all won't close it, man. I won't close it, but I didn't do that, man.
No, we want the truth. We want the
The truth.
You want
The
to
truth. You want the
tell us
truth.
how it happened.
I didn't do it.
Tell us how it happened.
I didn't do it.
Tell us how it happened.
You can sit there and say I did it all you want. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Either that, I'm being framed. I did not being framed. I didn't do
That's
that.
you coming back.
I didn't set no fire.
Tell us where you saw this officer.
Man, I ain't set no fire, man. I didn't set no
Is
fire.
it possible, man?
So we've got cooked breakfast. I ain't set no fire, man. He went to Sam's Club, went to JC. We did a whole lot of stuff. Now, guess what? Now we got all the timelines with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Then you just told us
You trying to
you
carry
were walking down Fulton.
I'm walking down. You told me I was walking down there. Yeah. That's what y'all said. Y'all weren't walking down. What are you saying? You weren't?
You just told us you were. You said, what, I'm not allowed to walk?
Right. Okay. You got no camera walking down there. But guess what?
You said I'm not allowed to
If you said I'm walking down there and I walk back up the street, there wasn't no damn fire.
So what were you doing down there?
I I wasn't doing shit down there, nothing.
You thought maybe you saw somebody, maybe you saw something.
Tell us what you
saw.
Tell us the truth, man.
Tell us.
It's dark down, I didn't see shit, man. You know, there'd be all kind of people walking.
Did you hear anything?
Huh?
Did you hear anything?
Tell us.
Did you hear something?
No.
You hear nothing? No. So how was your neighbors 3 houses down from the corner from you? 3 or 4 houses down on the other side of the street?
They heard something.
Heard booms.
I didn't hear that, man.
How is it that they heard it? They came out their house
I ain't hear
and
that.
walked to the corner, stood in front of your house or in the middle of the street, calling us, calling 911. And you said you wouldn't hear nothing.
Mom, why you
Impossible.
I didn't hear no
Impossible.
boom. I didn't hear no boom, man.
You were outside.
Why I didn't do that?
We agreed that you were outside. We got you walking back.
Okay, but I didn't do that.
We agreed. We got you walking back.
No, I didn't do that.
You still haven't.
I'm not gonna agree to that.
Still,
I'm not
we still
gonna
haven't. We saw about you being outside. We got you walking back and you coming back. Walking down, coming back.
I just had
20 seconds.
At the precise
20 seconds. 20 seconds. 20 seconds. 20 seconds, Dan.
I just said no fire, man.
20 seconds, Dan.
It's not a coincidence.
It's not.
It's not a coincidence.
It's not. It's going to your mother's house. You precise. Listen.
With you being out, walking down posts, leaving your house, the fire starts, you coming back on camera. That's not a coincidence.
It's not.
That's not a coincidence.
Okay, so you said, well, so when I started the fire with then? You tell us? I did. So you got me, so you were there? No.
Let's go there. Let's go there. Let's go there. And we can tell you where. We can tell you where.
I didn't do
We can
that.
tell you where you started.
You may be able to tell me where it
I can tell you
started,
where it started.
but I didn't start it.
You started. I can tell you where and what.
I didn't do it.
Stanley,
Yeah.
you expect us to believe that?
Well, y'all don't
Okay, well, right. No, we got evidence. This supports it. Okay? We got you walking from your house, setting the fire,
I said the fire.
and then coming back, and not telling us you were shooting. You're not sleeping.
You're not once again. I'm gonna tell you once again, when I saw that fire, I ordered 2 sleep. I just don't have the right time. I sleep.
You weren't asleep.
Okay, I'm
Tell us where you were. You said I ain't got no
They shouldn't be talking now, man, because you guys always said I did that. I'm trying to. You guys don't know how I did something. And I'm telling you, I didn't do it.
Why?
I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Why is this one thing?
I didn't do
We
it.
know what happened. We still know why.
I didn't do it. I would, you know what? I
What
don't have no reason.
is going on in your mind, man?
That might not go on my mind. So I didn't have no
So you
reason.
couldn't have heard it, you couldn't have seen it.
I don't have no, listen here. No.
You gonna say, tell us what you started with?
Nah, I ain't
You gonna do this? You gonna do that?
I didn't do it. I didn't do this.
You did that, you can tell yourself that. I know it's difficult.
It's definitely hard. It's serious.
I
Serious.
didn't
You
do
know,
it.
serious.
I didn't do it, man.
You know, serious.
It's
But
serious.
you don't expect us to believe that.
You're not gonna believe it. You guys never did believe it. You guys never
The
believe it.
facts speak
No,
to.
you guys never believe
We
it.
did the investigation.
No, that's fine,
The
but
facts state what they
I didn't
said.
say that far.
Can you agree that, can you agree to the facts are what they are, the facts are the facts?
It ain't no facts that I said that far. I didn't do
We
that.
got a lot of facts.
I did.
Why are you out walking in front of the fire?
I was hanging off from the fire.
You still haven't started.
Why are you walking down Fulton at the time of the fire?
I didn't walk down to the
Okay.
time of the fire, man.
You did. You came back and I told you, and it's still like,
Detective Looney, the clip that we just played of that multiple hour interview, did that accurately reflect the conversation and interview you had with between you, Mr. Ford, and John Bell?
yes.
At the very beginning of this interview, prior to this portion that we just played, was Mr. Ford advised of what he was being charged with?
Yes.
So was he aware that you were charging him with the aggravated murder of 7 people?
Yes.
At the point where you were clearly, for the last, I think it's 15, 20 minutes, asking why were you down there? Why were you asking that?
We wanted to know.
And did you give him an opportunity to explain any reason he was down there?
Yes.
Did you even give him suggestions, and not in this portion, beyond this?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Such as what?
What did you see? Maybe you saw someone.
Did you ask him about maybe if he was going down there to buy drugs and things of that nature?
I'm not sure if we mentioned
Okay.
drugs, but we inquired, what were you doing?
Did you ask him about other possible reasons he might be down there to give him a way out?
Yes.
Like what? If you recall.
Did you have someone you were seeing?
So you asked him if he was out, basically having an affair.
Yes.
Did he deny that?
Yes.
And at any point during the rest of this interview, did he ever explain to you or give you a reason why he was down there?
He did not.
Joe, what was the exhibit, the next one? Exhibit number? The 4144. Oh, yeah, here it is. Just to make sure it's correct. Sorry, Judge, for some reason this is not pulling up. Detective Looney, and let me switch this back over before I start. During your investigation, obviously we've talked quite a bit about the person coming in that side door, correct?
Correct.
And we also talked about yesterday about that 730 Fultz address, recall that?
Yes.
And obviously, we talked about what efforts you went to go out there and look at 730 Fultz to see if that was a possibility.
That's correct.
Additionally, did you have the opportunity to be shown or see video from earlier on May, well, I say during the day on May 17th of 2017?
Yes.
And this would be the day before the search warrant.
That's correct.
And was there anything of note that you saw on that video?
Yes.
All right, do you recognize the video, the still of the video that we just talked about, May 17th,
Yes, I do.
2017? And I'm starting on the time on the surveillance camera says 17:41:02 Wednesday.
Okay.
So I'm going to play this for you. And if you would, please tell us the significance of this as it plays. And it's about 3 minutes long, 3.5
Okay.
minutes long. So first of all, what is this view from?
This is from the camera number 4 located at 714 Fultz. And we're beginning to see movement from 1370 Hillcrest. It appears to be a female and a small child that has come out of the side of the home there at 1370.
And I'm going to pause it there for a second. Now, we talked about yesterday about who lived in that house.
Mr. Ford, Zanetta Ford, and the 2 children.
All right. And you've met Miss Ford?
Yes.
And looking at this photo now, obviously it's very far away. You can't see the face. But does the person in that photo match or is it consistent with Miss Ford's size, height, and also the age of the child that she has?
Yes, there are 2 children that live there, but it appears to be a female and a small child.
All right.
We're seeing movement of another individual coming out of the side of 1370 Hillcrest. It appears to be maybe a small child, kind of hard to tell.
Okay. But potentially a second child?
Potentially, yes. I see a vehicle coming down the street on Fultz.
And while this is playing, and there's nothing of activity going on, see this little thing I'm pointing at here with the cursor?
Yes.
What does that appear to be?
Appears to be their awning, part of an awning or part of a screen door.
Is that the one we talked about yesterday?
Yes.
Now it's 17:44:10. What are we seeing here?
There was movement at the side of 1370 and another individual has come out of the home.
And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 152 and 153. Showing you State's 152 first.
Okay.
What does that appear to be?
This is a still shot image of 1370 Hillcrest showing the partial, the front, and the side with what appears to be the door open and possibly an individual in that frame.
So this is a still shot from the video we just watched.
Yes.
All right. And showing you State's Exhibit number 153, what do you see there?
This is another still shot captured from the video shown by the presentation. It has a zoomed in image, a closer image of 1370 Hillcrest and with the door open, what appears to be a door open.
All right. And is this a snapshot of the video that you had been discussing with Mr. Ford about somebody coming into the side of his house during those interviews?
Yes.
And are these photographs, do they accurately represent the snapshot of the videos that, that you testified about?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what number is that?
This one is 153.
Thank you.
And this one's 152. Of course, the light is not very good, is it?
Could you zoom out?
Oh, thank you, Judge. Oh, I see. Okay.
Hold the one on your right down a little bit. Or would you
The
go up?
glare. Thank you.
It's the light. Did you try shutting the light off?
It is off. And so now those are two states 52 and 152 and 153 that you just identified.
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Mr. Gorman, cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
What do you need?
What you need?
No, I just want the screen clear.
Oh,
But we can do it later.
go ahead, Scott.
Well, just put the computer up, just that.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Detective Lee.
Good morning.
You know me, Joe Gorman.
Yes.
You know Scott Riley.
Yes, I do.
And you know we represent Stanley Ford.
Yes, sir.
You've had the benefit of being the only witness to testify in this matter that has been able to watch all the other witnesses testify, correct?
That's correct.
With every other witness, there's a separation of witnesses. They're not allowed to watch other people's testimony, but as the lead investigator and representative of the state, you get that benefit, right?
That's correct.
And I'm assuming you've paid attention to the testimony you've heard throughout the weeks that we've been in here, correct?
Correct.
All right. You've met with the prosecutors in preparation for your testimony several times, I'm sure, correct?
Correct.
You created a report of investigation, correct?
Yes.
And I believe, Detective Looney, that report is 175 pages in length. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Now, in fairness, I won't say a majority, but a good portion of that report of investigation is transcripts from your interviews with Mr. Ford. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. You have your report with you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And so you know the drill from sitting in here, at least as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yes.
If you need to refer to your report, I don't object to that before you answer, and I may even direct you to your report before you answer.
Okay.
And if you do, just let us know you're using your report rather than your memory, correct?
Okay. Yes.
All right, and you would agree with me from the other police officers that I've talked to, I think, that we create that report as the lead detective. That's what you were in the second fire, correct?
Yes.
You also assisted some in the first fire. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And that investigation not only took place in 2016, but that investigation of the second fire, that went into the summer of 2017, did it not?
That's correct.
All right. And you assisted Tanisha Stewart, Detective Stewart, in her investigation, fair?
Yes, fair.
Because as we've already know, Mr. Ford did not get arrested for any of these crimes until May 23rd, 2017. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, is that the same day that we just saw a video of an interrogation with you, Detective Bell, and Mr. Ford in that interrogation room? Was that the same day that he was arrested?
Yes.
Okay. And we saw him, and I'll go back to that, but we saw him, he was handcuffed to the table, correct?
Yes.
So he's got a handcuff on one hand, and that handcuff then is connected to a bolt on the table, so he can't stand up and move if he wants to, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And you said that interrogation that day took place over a little over a 3-hour period of time. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Did you bring him right from his house into that interrogation room?
He was transported by a wagon.
Okay. By a wagon, but was he brought right from his house up into the 6th floor of the Detective Bureau into that interrogation room?
Yes.
Okay. And he was probably, I'm assuming, handcuffed to the table, and then you left him in there for a while by himself, correct?
Yes.
And that's kind of an interrogation technique from the Akron Police Department, isn't it?
It's more so just in preparation and going in to talk to him.
Okay.
In transportation.
All right, and we'll get back to that. I just wanted to develop. There are no windows in that room. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And that table is bolted to the floor?
Yes.
Okay. And you told him prior to talking to him that day, you told him that he was being charged with these murders, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You would agree your report of investigation, if there was one tool you utilized to review as a detective in preparation for testimony in any trial, the report of investigation would be the key. Would you agree?
Yes, one of them, yes.
Okay. But it's certainly where you're supposed to memorialize, where you're taught and trained as a detective to memorialize the things that you do in an investigation, correct?
Yes.
And you heard me say this to Tanisha Stewart, so you can look back 4 or 5 years from, look back and refresh your memory as to what you did, correct?
Yes.
Because our memories or what we put in that report certainly would be done a lot closer in time than perhaps testifying before this jury today, fair?
Yes.
And you reviewed the videos in preparation for your testimony, correct?
That's correct.
And those videos not only included the video from Chester Williams' house, but also included videos from 719 Fultz. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And it also included, for instance, the video that we just saw Mr. Ford in when he was chained to the table, correct?
Correct.
All of those things are part of you memorializing your investigation as well, correct?
Yes, correct.
And things are taken from crime scenes, and this is a general question, when you believe they have evidentiary value, correct?
Correct.
Sometimes we take things that might have evidentiary value, but we don't know until we get it further analyzed. Is that fair?
That's fair.
That's kind of where the crime scene unit comes into play, right?
Yes.
As the lead investigator in a case, if you're out at a crime scene and that crime scene truck comes out, they come out and they take direction from the people that are in charge of the scene as to what is important, what is not. Fair?
That's fair, yes.
And it's directed, they're directed, hey, you might want to go over here and take a look at this. We might want some photos of that. There might be evidence over here that can be collected. Fair?
That's fair.
And that evidence is collected in a manner, a forensic manner, in which you're preserving to the best of your capability with your experience the crime scene, correct?
That's correct.
Because you don't want to contaminate the crime scene. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
So the quicker you can make the decisions about what is important at a crime scene and what is not, the better chance you have to preserve the crime scene, correct?
Correct.
Because if you leave and you come back and say, oh, wow, 2 weeks ago we should have done this, and you go back, the evidence itself may be compromised. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And that's a general statement about any crime scene. Fair enough?
That's fair.
Okay. So I asked Detective Stewart this question, but I'm going to ask you as well. The DVR for the video system at 730 Fultz, to your knowledge, we heard from Detective Stewart, she never collected that. Did you ever collect that?
I did not.
Okay. So there is no DVR to analyze from 730 Fultz, correct?
I'm not sure whether there's, I didn't collect it. I'm not sure if there is. We were told it didn't work.
Well, the camera was unplugged, correct?
It was, yes, and
All right.
I saw in the
Did anyone ever go inside or ask the owner to get the DVR?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. You would agree with me that if that camera system was working, but someone unplugged it shortly before the 2016 fire, or maybe even the 2017 fire, that the DVR, we've learned from the experts that have come in here, would still have video evidence of what was going on before it was unplugged, correct?
It just depends. That's a pretty vague question.
Well, we know Chester Williams' DVR certainly, and the cameras weren't functioning when they collected the DVR, correct?
I believe so.
Not Chester Williams, excuse me. Lindell Lewis's house, 719 Fultz. We know that those cameras went through a horrible fire, correct?
Correct.
So we don't have the cameras anymore, but even the damaged DVR was found by Akron Police, correct?
Correct.
Or Akron Fire, right?
Correct.
And that was able to be sent off to a forensic lab with the state fire marshal, correct?
Correct.
And they were able to extract from that damaged DVR, even though it wasn't functioning at the time, they were able to, because the fire partially destroyed it, correct?
I'm not sure. I didn't actually examine it.
Well, you saw it introduced in here, and they talked about it being a damaged DVR. Do you recall that, Detective?
I'll take your word for that, yes.
Well, you sat here and they said it. Do you remember?
I'll take your word for that.
Okay. That DVR was able to provide video evidence of somebody starting that fire on the side of that house, correct?
Correct.
We saw video, or at least pictures taken from a video at Circle K. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Was that DVR from Circle K ever taken or confiscated?
No, it's not to my knowledge.
There was talk about a video system on East Avenue at Catholic Charities. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And that would have been on the corner of East Avenue, and is it Baruda? Is that the right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
It's in Baruda.
Was that DVR ever taken?
Not to my knowledge.
Who is, I may mispronounce the name, and I'll refer to your report if you want.
Okay.
Who is Andrew B-U-C-Z-K-O?
Bazooko, I believe?
Yes, it's a page 67 if you want to look.
Sure, man, sure.
No, I apologize. I mistake. 167.
That is a resident that lives on, actually, the corner of Fultz and Hillcrest. I believe he has a Hillcrest address. But I'll take a look.
Okay, sure, please.
I believe it is actually 67.
Oh, it is?
I believe.
I wrote 167 down, but you might be right.
That's,
167? Mr. Riley thinks it's 167.
okay.
Take your time.
All right. Should be early on in the report here.
He says fourth paragraph on the bottom.
Okay. I'm actually looking for the address and his photo,
Okay.
which is where we start the interview
Okay.
process. Okay, I have page 17 in my report with his photo and address and information.
Okay. Did you look at page 167 as well?
I can do that.
All right. I think that might supplement what's on what you're looking at.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, I don't want you to do two things at once. I'll wait.
Okay, 160, I have both pages.
Okay. So if I...
Six.
Back here, the
Thank you, Judge.
trial. The easel, excuse me.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked for purposes of identification as State's Exhibit 13. Can you see that from where you're standing, or do I need to change it?
I can see it.
Okay. And where's that pointer?
I have it here.
Oh, you have it already, great.
Yes.
So if tell ladies and gentlemen, the jury, first of all, what State's Exhibit 13 is, if you know.
This is an overview of the neighborhood showing Fultz, Hillcrest, and Russell and Height Street.
Okay.
A portion of East Avenue.
And if you could, just so we have our bearings, even though it's been done before, the fire at 693 Fultz, can you just point to that with the pointer?
Okay, it's a little bit off the screen, but it will be in this area here.
Okay. And Mr. Ford's house would be where?
Mr. Ford's 2 homes are here,
Okay.
1370, 1374.
Okay. This gentleman that I spoke of, this Andrew, is it Buxo?
That's fair.
Where did he live?
I'm sorry.
Or does he live if he's...
He actually has an address at 1324 Height Street, which is approximately on the corner here, but the front, I believe the front of his home faces Height, but it's right at the intersection of Fultz and the bend there.
Okay.
This home here, this home right here.
Okay. And you noticed, or somebody that was working for you during the course of this investigation noticed that he had a camera on his house as well. Is that fair?
That's correct.
All right. And you learned that camera was pointed in which direction?
Pointing in the direction of 693 Fultz.
Okay. So that had interest to you, right?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. And you talked to him, correct? Or somebody did?
Yes.
Was it you personally?
I believe I did. I actually called him. Detective Smith, I believe, made contact and informed us of the camera, and then I called Mr.
Okay. And learn.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I apologize.
What's his first name?
Andrew.
Let's call him Andrew.
I called Andrew.
You learned from him that the camera was non-functioning. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
All right. Same question though. Did you ever retrieve his DVR for analysis?
We did not.
Okay. Let's talk about, while we have it up, there's been talk about the alarms at 1374 Hillcrest, correct?
That's correct.
And there's been talk about that side door at 1370 Hillcrest, correct?
Correct.
And I think we were talking about that again this morning, fair?
Yes, fair.
At 1374 Hillcrest, did anybody over the course of either the 2016 or 2017 investigation, after either of the fires, did anybody have crime scene unit at 1374 Hillcrest try and retrieve fingerprints from the keypad that would allow you into 1374 Hillcrest?
I don't believe so, no.
Did anyone try and gather or swab that keypad for DNA?
I don't believe so.
All right. If we talk about latent fingerprints, I think there was discussion of that prior, and we lift a fingerprint off of an object, if we can. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. That's fair, right?
That's fair, yes.
Depending on surface area and all that, we've kind of heard some testimony about that. You would agree with that based on your training and experience?
Yes.
If we're able to lift a fingerprint off, and then we have a known fingerprint from somebody, we can compare that fingerprint and see whether it matches, correct?
That's correct.
Potentially.
Potentially, yes.
And we would use a forensic scientist at BCI perhaps to do that?
Or crime scene, yes.
Ridge detail and things of that nature?
Absolutely, yes.
Now, if you went to my home and went to my kitchen countertop and you lifted my finger or a latent fingerprint off of my kitchen countertop, and then you had a known print of me, that wouldn't surprise you very much, right?
That's correct.
Because I live there.
That's correct.
You might find my fingerprints there, right?
That's correct.
Much the same as if you found a fingerprint from Stanley Ford on the keypad at 1374, you wouldn't be shocked at all, would you?
That's correct.
The Akron Police Department has access to fingerprints is it CODIS?
I'm not sure about access, but we contact the system. I'm not sure. I'm not in the crime scene, but...
Okay. Well, you know as a detective, Akron Police Department has a bank of known fingerprints, correct?
I believe so.
And they can compare latent fingerprints left from a crime scene from fingerprints that they have that they're already aware of, correct?
I believe so. There's
right.
a submission process.
All right. And they can also do that with DNA, fair?
There's a submission process to whatever agency.
Right, well, when you are a criminal in the state of Ohio and been convicted of a felony, you have to give up your DNA, don't you?
That's correct.
So any known felon in the state of Ohio who has committed a felony has to submit a DNA sample, correct?
Yeah, sometimes we get cooperation, sometimes we do not, but they do typically, yes.
Well, the judge orders it in a courtroom, and they have to do that, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So there's a bank of DNA profiles
Yes,
from known criminals, correct?
that's fair.
That can be compared to DNA that's found at a crime scene, correct?
Correct.
Sometimes detectives utilize that tool in solving crimes, correct?
Yes,
Like, for instance, if it was a fingerprint or if it was DNA and somebody else who had no business being in my home, touching my countertop, and we found their fingerprint or we found their DNA on that countertop, that'd probably be bad news for them in the course of the investigation, correct?
it depends if it could be the repair person.
Well, no, if it's somebody who had no business in my home.
Well, more than likely, that's correct.
Okay. Did any DNA analysis or any fingerprint analysis get done of that phone or that keypad at Mr. Ford's 1374 address either shortly after the 2016 fire, shortly after the 2017 January car fire, or shortly after the May of 2017 house fire?
Not to my knowledge.
Scott, can I get that picture up? Joe, what's this exhibit number on Akron?
So it should say it's
128.
Thank you.
It is slide number 6.
Detective, I'm going to ask you to take a look at the video screen, and you can pull that around if
Okay.
you'd like.
You still need my reports?
Well, we probably will, but you can do whatever you want with them.
Okay.
All right.
What, I'm sorry, this is 128?
Yes, 128, I believe it's slide 6 for the record. Am I saying that right, Joe?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So State's Exhibit 128, slide 6. Can you tell, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what it is we're looking at?
This is a still shot or photograph image of the front of 1374 Hillcrest.
Okay, when we talk about 1374 Hillcrest, just to be clear, if it's not already, and I'm sure it might be, that's the home that has the alarm system. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
On May 18th of 2017, you conducted your interview in your detective-issued vehicle with Stanley Ford. Is that fair?
Yes.
Where, in relation to that house, was that interview conducted?
I was actually parked on the street on the, would be the east side of the street there.
All right, if we took a look at State's Exhibit 13, would you be able to take that pointer and just point to approximately where you were located during that interview process?
Yes, I can. This is 1374 here, Hillcrest. I was parked approximately right here.
Okay.
Facing south.
So, facing south, going down towards Russell?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's where you brought Mr. Ford to do that interview, correct?
That's correct. He was escorted by Detective Bell to my MTV car.
Okay. And Detective Bell would have been the same detective that we saw in that interview on May 23rd, 2017, this morning on the video, correct?
Correct,
In the
yes.
interrogation room?
Yes.
Okay. You had an opportunity to go inside 1374, is that fair?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you also had an opportunity to go inside 1370, the house next door? Is
Yes.
that fair?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You didn't conduct the entire search, and we'll talk about that later, but you had the opportunity to walk inside, correct?
Yes, both residences.
Okay. Did you walk through all the floors of both residences?
Yes.
Okay. So as it relates to 1374 then, the picture that we see there, that front door, if you walk in that front door, you are in an enclosed front porch, is that fair?
I believe, to my recollection, yes.
Okay. And those 3 windows next to that door, that they are also in the enclosed front porch?
Yes.
All right, and then there's another door that goes into the main area of the house, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay. And then that, just for clarification purposes, that house that we see we see it, there's a gentleman in the driveway, fair?
Yes, 2 and appears to be a female also.
Okay. That house we see behind 1374 Fultz, it appears to be pink, is that true?
That's correct.
At the time, that was pink, fair?
Yes.
We went out to do the viewing, I think it's white now, is that?
It is white currently, yes.
And that would be the house that has come up often in conversation of 1370 Fultz, is that fair?
That's actually 730.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No problem.
730 Fultz.
That's correct.
The one where I asked if you got the DVR.
That's correct.
Okay, I thank you for correcting me. Okay. My approach, Judge?
You may.
Captain, I'm going to hand you what's been previously marked for purposes of identification as Defendant's Exhibit C, D, and E.
Okay.
Ask if you would to take a look at those. And if you can, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what it is you're looking at.
Okay. All right. Exhibit C is a photograph of a jacket lying on the floor. Exhibit D is a photograph of another coat or jacket that's hanging up. Appears to be a Carhartt logo. There's Exhibit E is actually a photograph of another jacket or sweat shirt with a hooded sweatshirt.
Okay. And those are items that were found during the search of Stanley Ford's home, correct?
That's correct.
And you heard the person that came in to conduct that search came in and told us that they used a dog, correct?
That's correct.
Inside the homes to try and smell, forensic dog to try and smell for the accelerants or gasoline on items, correct?
That's correct.
And these items were then confiscated or taken in the search warrant from Stanley Ford's home. Is that fair?
That's correct.
All right. And he said, and he was asked, I think, by Mr. Riley, he said, we tried to take every hoodie or coat of this nature that we could find. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Those items were then taken during the search. And the search, so the ladies and gentlemen are clear, a search is done after a judge, a police officer or prosecutor can approach a judge, say, Judge, based on these reasons, we have reason to believe that this could be a person or a suspect in this case, correct?
Correct.
And then the judge will sign an order allowing the police to go into the home, fair?
Yes.
And you did that because the law requires you to do that in this case to get inside the home, correct?
That's correct.
If you have probable cause to believe that there is evidence of potential crime in a case, you can go to a judge, you can file a sworn statement, an affidavit, laying out the reasons why that there may be evidence of a crime in a certain place for these reasons, correct?
Correct.
And a judge then can make that decision whether the judge believes there's probable cause to sign that order to allow the police to go into somebody's home to confiscate something, correct?
Correct.
And in this case, you did that at 1370, 1374 Hillcrest, correct?
I believe they were done, search warrants were done for both residences, yes.
To your knowledge, were there search warrants based on that procedure, or is that procedure followed to get into the home of any other residence or building or business or anything in this case?
Yes, it
Where?
was. For Mr. Patric Boggs in Levin, Ohio.
Okay, and Mr. Boggs, and you had to have the assistance, I believe, of Portage County law enforcement to do that through a Portage County judge, is that fair?
That is correct, yes.
All right. Outside of Mr. Boggs, and we heard some testimony about that search, correct?
Correct.
Outside of Mr. Boggs and Mr. Ford's homes, were there any other search warrants issued for searching a residence or a business in this matter?
Those were going to the locations. There were obviously cell phone search warrants and.
Right, that's why I said for residence.
Right, just these 2 residences.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
These items were taken, they were sent to the fire marshals, I think we heard during the testimony, to be examined to determine whether there was accelerant or gasoline on these items, correct?
That's correct.
And the results of that for these items found at Mr. Ford's home on May 18th were negative. There was no accelerant or gasoline on these items, is that fair?
Those 3 items you're asking, or
Yes.
all of the items?
These 3 items?
I'd have to see the actual report from the fire marshals.
Well, if the fire marshal testified in this case that was true, you wouldn't disagree.
I wouldn't disagree, no. We
Okay.
did see that testimony.
Okay. And so I guess maybe you're referring to, I guess I want to be clear, you're maybe referring to the shoes?
That's correct.
Okay, and we've had ample evidence about that already, correct?
Correct.
But you don't recall the fire marshal telling this jury that there was no accelerant or gasoline found on these items?
I'd have to see that. They refer to item numbers, but
Okay.
I'd have to see those item numbers.
Okay. I think Mr. Riley went item by item with them, if you recall.
I do remember item
Okay.
number.
All right,
Yes.
fair enough. Let's talk about a little bit about 693 Fultz, okay?
Okay.
You learned during the course of your investigation from several sources that Dennis Huggins was selling weed from that residence, correct?
That's correct.
You spoke with Brittany Boggs, correct?
Rick, I'm not sure. Ricky?
Brittany?
Brittany, I'm sorry. You said Ricky, I'm sorry.
That's
Brittany,
okay.
yes. Yes, we did.
Okay, you spoke with Ty Huggins, correct?
Correct, yes.
And who is Ty Huggins?
Ty Eunice is the son of Dennis.
Okay, and he lives in Indiana now?
I'm not sure what his current location.
He was in Indiana back then?
He'd been there, yes.
He had been kicked out of the house, correct?
Correct.
You pulled police reports showing there was conflict between him and Dennis Huggins, correct?
Yes.
Over, number one, being kicked out of the house, but also retrieving belongings and tax checks and things of that nature?
That's correct, yes.
And that happened in April of 2017, correct?
I believe so, yes.
You learned from Brittany Boggs that Patric Boggs had in fact been on Fultz Street dropping her off, correct?
Yes.
You learned that from Ty as well, correct?
Correct.
And you interviewed Mr. Boggs, correct?
Yes.
And when you asked him about that, you knew he was lying to you, correct?
He's mentioned he hadn't seen her. Well, that's correct.
And that he had no idea where Angela Boggs lived, correct?
That's correct.
So you know when you talk to Ty Boggs and you talk to Brittany Boggs that they say he was on that street in Fultz, he dropped me off, or I saw him drop Brittany off. And when you interview him, he lies to you about even knowing where Angela Boggs lives, correct?
Correct.
So, I'm not want to beat a dead horse, but you knew during the course of your investigation in 2001 that Patric Boggs tried to set Angela Boggs on fire, correct?
Correct.
Also beat her up, correct?
Correct.
Poured kerosene all over her and tried to light her while she was in a bathtub. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. So, as you said, I think rightfully so, he became a suspect in this case. Fair?
That's fair, yes.
So, just to keep things straight, I'm going to just write his name down like I did with Miss Detective Stewart.
Okay.
All right? And I'm going to label him suspect. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
I start again, Judge?
Only,
I don't know the difference between P and an R, I guess.
or you can just rip it off. Oh, yeah.
The joke starts 2 lawyers walking in the room.
So I think you've testified, Detective, on direct examination that clearly piques your interest, correct?
Correct.
The fact that he did this to Angela Boggs prior, correct?
Correct.
And then he spent a whole bunch of years in prison for it, correct?
Correct.
And he really hadn't been out that long when this fire happened, correct?
Correct.
So you decide he's on parole, right?
I discovered he was on parole,
Right.
yes.
And through the help, you correct me if I'm wrong, but through the help of the parole authority, you have him picked up. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. And you interview him, or you want him interviewed, correct?
Yes.
Is it Detective Gary that interviews him, or you?
Myself and Detective Gary.
You were both there.
Yes.
And did that happen on the 6th floor of the Akron Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. And that, was it the same dog that went through Mr. Ford's house? I think maybe we heard testimony was the same dog that hit on Mr. Ford's belongings that also hit on Mr. Boggs's socks?
I'm not sure if it's the same dog, but there were canines used in both.
Okay. And you get a hit, you confiscate those items, you send it to the lab for Mr. Boggs, and they say there's no accelerant on it. Is that fair?
I believe there was gasoline present on the socks.
Oh, okay. You believe that the lab indicated that?
I believe there was a hit at the police station.
There was a hit at the police station, but
Okay.
when it was sent off to the lab, I believe the result was then negative, if I'm not mistaken.
I have to see the report
Okay.
again.
Well, I'm not, I hope you appreciate this, I'm not in the business of misleading the jury, okay?
Okay.
If the testimony was that, you wouldn't disagree.
I wouldn't disagree. No.
Okay. You also knew, as you interviewed Patric Boggs, that there was a racial component to what happened in 2001, fair?
Yes.
He believed she was cheating on him with a black man, correct?
Correct.
That piqued your interest in this case too because of who Angela Boggs was now dating, fair?
That's correct.
Obviously, we know now Mr. Huggins is a black man, fair?
That's correct.
So when we talk about things, even though they're not legal elements, we talk about motives, correct?
Correct.
That was something that also piqued your interest, fair enough?
Fair enough.
You had testified yesterday about some cell phones that were collected from Patric Boggs, correct?
Yes.
Okay. One of those cell phones didn't even have his name on it. It had the name of, I believe, Tracy Evans.
That's correct.
And Tracy Evans would be the sister of Patric Boggs?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. He had the phone in his possession, correct?
I believe so. He was taken when he was arrested.
Okay. And did you take 3 phones from him?
I don't recall the amount of phones, but there were several numbers that were searched
Okay.
that he was identified with using.
Okay. He was identified as being someone who used those phones, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Were any of those phones, was an extraction performed on any of those phones?
Yes, there was.
And which phone was that?
I don't recall the actual number, but there was an extraction of one of the phones.
On one of the phones? How about the rest of the phones? Was an extraction performed?
I believe there was an attempt. I think it was a prepaid phone.
Okay. If you, as Tracy Evans gave Mr. Boggs her phone, if you gave me your phone and I drove from here to Ravenna and I started using your phone in Ravenna, would you expect that the phone listed under your name, if a cell phone tower check was done, would show that your phone would be pinging off the tower in or near Ravenna?
Yes, that's fair.
Okay. So the point being, because we have a cell phone in a certain location, that doesn't necessarily mean the individual whose name is on the cell phone is in that location, does it?
Not necessarily.
Well, if they don't have it with them, then it certainly would be true, correct? Hypothetically.
That's fair
Right?
enough.
Okay. So we don't know those things about cell phones. They're a tool, but they don't definitively tell us where someone might be. Is that fair?
That's fair.
I could also turn off my phone and it won't hit off any cell phone tower, correct?
Depends.
Okay. Some of the phones that we talked about yesterday only had information up to May 11th of 2017. Remember that?
Yes.
The phones that only had information up to May 11th, 2017, would you agree with me? They're really of no value in telling us not only where that person was on May 15th of 2017, but more importantly, where that phone was on May 15th of 2017. We just don't know, do we?
That's fair.
Now, you interview Mr. Boggs. Is it May 17th when you interview him? Is that the day he's interviewed?
We interviewed him twice, on the 15th and on the 19th also.
Okay. Let's talk then about the 15th. He's interviewed in the 6th floor of the Detective Bureau, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then he's interviewed again on the 19th of May, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
He is returned after his May 15th interview. He's sent to the Portage County Jail. Would you agree with that?
That's correct.
Okay. And the Portage County Jail, sir, is falls under the authority of the Portage County Sheriff's Department. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Much like these gentlemen here, these Summit County jail sheriff's folks, they also run the Summit County Jail, right?
That's correct.
So Summit County Sheriff, Portage County Sheriff, they have investigative responsibilities in their counties, correct?
That's correct.
They have traffic investigative responsibilities in their counties, correct?
That's correct.
They have detectives, correct?
That's correct.
And they also keep order and house people at the jail. Fair enough?
That's correct.
And speaking of that, Mr. Ford has been in the Summit County Jail, because we heard about jail calls. Remember we heard about those?
Yes.
He's been in the Summit County Jail since May 23rd of 2017. Fair?
That's correct.
So he's been there almost 4.5 years. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Boggs, on May 17th of 2017, was in a similar facility, the Portage County Jail, correct?
That's correct.
And he was there as you were conducting your investigation, fair?
That's correct.
You received at some point after that, sometime after May 21st, I believe, you received information from Portage County Sheriff's Department about activity at the Portage County Jail involving Mr. Boggs. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And I believe the Akron Police Department, was it you directly that was contacted or somebody else?
I believe it was somebody else. I believe
Okay.
it was Lieutenant Vice or Captain at the time.
Thank you. But you became aware of this, correct?
That's correct.
The Portage County Sheriff's Department contacted the Akron Police Department and said, we've got some information about Boggs that you might be interested in. I'm paraphrasing, correct?
That's correct.
And they went ahead and they sent a report done by one of the deputies from the Portage County Jail about what the deputy witnessed at the jail. Is that fair?
That's fair.
All right. There was an I think the Portage County Corrections Officer was Karen Kraus. Does that sound fair?
That's fair, yes.
she sent what I guess I would call loosely translated an action taken. Is that fair?
That's fair.
We've heard those terms.
Yes, yes, we have.
And she notified you through this writing and maybe verbally that there was an inmate Selby, S-C-L-B-Y, at the Portage County Jail at the same time Mr. Boggs was, correct?
Correct.
And they were in the same pod, correct?
I believe so.
All right. And are you able, Detective, to tell the jury what a pod means as far as the jail is concerned?
To my knowledge, a location cell.
Okay, so there are different, sometimes they'll call them cell blocks, right?
I would ask the deputies.
Okay, but there are areas of the jail, everybody in the jail doesn't have access to everybody else in the jail.
I'm sorry. I don't believe so.
Okay, so Selby is near Boggs, we know that, right?
Yes.
Okay, and on May 21st at 2:35, Selby hits an intercom because he wants to speak to one of the deputies, correct?
Correct.
And that deputy shows up at his cell, correct?
Correct.
All right. And Selby was reluctant at the cell to tell the deputy why he wanted to talk to the deputy, fair?
Fair enough.
He wanted to have a face-to-face conversation because they were talking through the slit in the door that you pass the food through, correct?
Well, I wasn't present, but that sounds fair.
But if it's in the report, you don't deny it, right?
I don't deny that.
Okay. Wants a face-to-face, so they take him out of his cell and they bring him over to whatever the command post is or the desk is that the deputies sit at. Fair?
Fair enough.
Okay. And before he goes over there, he's motioning towards Boggs' cell, correct?
That's fair.
Which is cell number 126 for the record. Fair?
That's fair enough.
Okay. He gets out, he goes over to the desk, and he says to them, Boggs confessed to me, correct?
That's correct.
And the deputy notes in her report, she says, I saw them outside of their cells earlier in the day, throughout the day, and she didn't know what they were saying, but she saw them conversing. Is that fair?
That's fair.
So he says, Selby tells the deputy Boggs confesses to the murder of the family in Akron, right?
That's fair.
And he says that a barbecue grill was on the porch and makes further comments of Boggs saying he threw hot coals in a bag that helped start or ignite the fire. Fair?
That's fair.
That's what Selby says Boggs says, right?
That's fair, yes.
Okay. She notes in her report, as Selby's telling her this, that he appears a little shaken, correct?
Correct.
So Selby's displaying some nervousness or he's shaken up, correct?
Correct.
And he says one of those kids was his, meaning one of those kids was actually Boggs' child that died in the fire, correct?
Correct.
And he comments, how could someone do that, right?
That's correct.
He then indicates that Boggs is angry over the fact that Angela Boggs is now living with a black man, correct?
That's correct.
The deputy then takes it upon herself to contact her supervisor, who contacts the assistant jail administrator. Fair?
Fair.
And that is the backdrop, I guess, for how you received this action taken from this deputy from Portage County. True?
That's fair.
Okay. So, Detective, for the reasons stated and discussed, both on your direct examination and here, That's why if we looked at your report of investigation, you would have Boggs at least as a suspect in this case. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
All right. I want to talk about
Mr. Gorman, can we-
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 11 a.m. We're going to go ahead and take our morning break. Remember the admonition I've previously given you about your conduct. It's important that you be fair and attentive throughout the trial. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else, including family, friends, or the media. You must not post or read anything about this case, whether in a newspaper or on the internet through any electronic device, including your cell phone. Any such discussion, if discovered, could lead to a mistrial and would severely compromise the party's right to a fair trial. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. Do not form or express an opinion on this case until it's finally been submitted to you. Leave your notepads upside down on your chairs, and if you'll be back in the jury room at 11:15.
All rise, please.